Patty Macias had 3 seconds to decide if a mafia boss deserved to live. The red dot on Giovanni Avellino's chest wasn't a reflection, it was a sniper's promise. And the moment she leaned in to whisper, "Move fast, they're here, run now," she signed a contract written in blood that would cost her everything she had left. By the time the first bullet shattered the crystal, she'd already crossed a line she didn't know existed. And the man she saved was about to teach her that in his world, debts aren't forgiven. They're collected with interest that compounds in devotion, danger, and a kind of possession that feels like drowning and breathing at the same time. Before we dive into the story, kindly let us know in the comment where you are watching from. In a world where survival costs more than morality, the most dangerous choices are the ones made in a heartbeat. Patty Macias thought her nightmare was watching her husband drain their bank account and disappear into the Florida sun. That was before she saw the red dot trembling over a mafia boss's heart and realized that saving the devil might be the only way to save her daughter. In Chicago's underworld, everyone plays a part. But the most dangerous people are the ones you never see coming. La Coroncina wasn't just a restaurant. It was a cathedral of power dressed in candlelight and aged wine. Aldermen negotiated rezoning over Osobuco. Hedge fund criminals laundered reputations behind white tablecloths. And men like Giovanni Avellino came to pretend the blood on their empires had finally washed clean. He sat at table 16 beneath amber light that cost more per bulb than Patty made in tips all week, his cufflinks catching gold, his posture carved from marble and menace. To the city councilman shaking his hand, he was the philanthropist who funded youth programs and hospital wings. To the families who whispered his name in basements and back rooms, he was still the boy from the butcher shop who'd turned protection rackets into political influence and violence into venture capital. Tonight, he was trying to believe in civilization across $70 steaks and murmured negotiations. Patty Macias moved through the dining room like smoke through stone. She didn't smile the way the other servers did, bright and grateful, engineered to vanish into the wallpaper of luxury. Her face carried the kind of stillness that came from counting every dollar, every minute, every breath her daughter took 3 miles away in a hospital bed. Her hands, steady as a surgeon's despite the exhaustion, refilled wine glasses and cleared plates with precision that seemed almost mechanical. Giovanni noticed. He told himself he shouldn't. But there was something in the way she moved through the space, not with a waitress's practiced choreography, but with a mother's desperate efficiency. Her eyes didn't linger on tips or compliments. They tracked time. The last bus to St. Augustine Children's Hospital, the visiting hours that ended at 9, the phone that hadn't buzzed in her apron pocket for exactly 43 minutes. She existed in the gaps between other people's indulgence, invisible by necessity, drowning by design. Except tonight, she saw something no one else did. At 8:47 p.m., a red dot appeared on Giovanni Avellino's chest, like a drop of blood on white linen. By 8:48, the choice Patty made would bind her to a man more dangerous than the bullet meant to kill him. But to understand how a broke waitress became the only thing standing between a mafia boss and his grave, you need to understand that Patty Macias wasn't born desperate. She was made that way. By a husband who stole her future. By a daughter whose heartbeat cost more than Patty could ever earn. By a city that had already decided people like her were disposable. And Giovanni Avellino? He'd spent a lifetime believing power made him untouchable. Tonight, a woman with nothing left to lose was about to teach him that the most dangerous debts are the ones paid in whispered warnings and split-second trust. Welcome back, beautiful souls. Before we dive in, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, drop a like, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Every click, every share, every bit of love helps us keep these stories alive and reaches someone who needs to hear them. So grab your coffee, find your quiet corner, and let me take you somewhere you've never been before. The red dot didn't move. It waited. Patty's entire body locked up mid-pour, Chianti suspended in air as her brain caught up to what her eyes were screaming. A laser sight. Clean, steady, professional. Tracking the rise and fall of Giovanni's breathing like a heartbeat made visible. Someone had a rifle pointed at table 16, her world compressed into a single second of math. If she screams, he dies. If she runs, he dies. If she does nothing, he dies. And the hospital donations dry up, and Sophie's surgery gets pushed back indefinitely, and her daughter becomes another statistic in a system that only moves for money. Patty made a choice that would destroy her life to save it. She moved forward, legs shaking beneath her black skirt, and leaned in as if to ask about dessert. Her fingers grazed Giovanni's shoulder, a touch so light it could have been accidental. Her lips nearly brushed his ear as she whispered, "Move fast, they're here. Run now." Giovanni didn't ask questions. His eyes flicked once to the red dot painting his shirt, then to the mirrored wall behind the bar. Something cold and lethal slid behind his composed expression, a predator recognizing the scent of other predators. In the space of a single breath, he flipped the table. The world became glass and gunfire. Giovanni's hand locked around Patty's wrist, yanking her down with brutal efficiency as the first bullet punched through crystal where his head had been. Shrapnel exploded. Wine turned to mist. The dining room erupted into screaming chaos as expensive bodies dove for cover beneath furniture that cost more than their cars. But Giovanni wasn't cowering. He was moving with the coiled violence of a man who'd never stopped being dangerous. Just learned to wear better suits. He pulled Patty behind the overturned table, his body a shield, his breathing controlled. Around them his men materialized from shadows she hadn't known existed, guns appearing in hands that had been holding menus seconds before. Return fire cracked through the air. The shooter's position, somewhere across the street, went dark. Silence fell like a curtain. Giovanni released her wrist slowly, deliberately. His eyes, dark and burning with something that made her breath catch, locked onto hers across the wreckage of table 16. "You saw it," he said quietly. Not a question. A recognition. Patty's pulse hammered. The dot. I saw the dot. My men didn't. His gaze never wavered, intense and hungry and far too knowing. Trained killers, and they missed it. But you, a waitress counting tips and checking her phone, you saw death coming before anyone else in this room. She should lie. Should play it off as luck, as accident, as anything other than what it was. The hypervigilance of a woman who'd spent months calculating probabilities and scanning for threats because her daughter's life depended on her being fast enough, smart enough, desperate enough. But something in Giovanni's expression told her he already knew. "Who are you?" he asked, voice rough with adrenaline and something darker. Someone who should have minded her own business. Too late for that. He stood, moving toward her with predatory grace. His torn suit jacket revealing the tattoo curling from his collar, black and scarlet ink that matched the color of the wine now staining the floor. Blood mixed with Chianti on his cufflinks. He looked magnificent and terrifying. Sirens wailed in the distance. "The police are coming," Patty whispered. "Let them." Giovanni's eyes never left hers. Self-defense, attempted hit. No civilian casualties. He tilted his head. "But you won't be here for it, will you? You'll disappear back to whatever life you're pretending to live, because women like you don't talk to cops." Her breath stuttered. He knew. Somehow he knew she couldn't afford attention, couldn't risk questions, couldn't exist anywhere official records might look too close. "Stay," he said simply. A command wrapped in silk. "I can't." "Then take this." He pressed something into her palm. A business card. Black. Embossed. A phone number and nothing else. "When you realize you need what I'm offering, call." "I don't need anything from you." Giovanni smiled, and it was the saddest, most knowing expression she'd ever seen. "Everyone needs something, Patty, and you just saved my life. That makes you three things: valuable, vulnerable, and mine to protect whether you like it or not. She should run, should vanish through the kitchen exit before his world could swallow hers whole. But she felt his gaze on her back the entire way out. Hot, possessive, inevitable. Like a man who'd already decided she belonged to him and was simply waiting for her to realize it too. 72 hours after La Coroncina became a crime scene, Giovanni sat in his office watching the city sprawl below like a chessboard of sin and survival. The media had feasted on the story. Beloved philanthropist survives assassination attempt. No injuries. Investigation ongoing. His lawyers had crafted the narrative perfectly. But Giovanni wasn't thinking about optics. He was thinking about her. Patty Macias, single mother, underwater on hospital bills. Husband vanished 6 months ago with their savings. Daughter, Sophia, 8 years old, in critical care at St. Augustine, the same hospital his family had funded for 20 years. The same hospital where his rival, Marcus Delgado, had just been named to the donors' board. Giovanni's jaw tightened. Sir, his head of security, Vincent, appeared in the doorway. We identified the shooter, former military, hired gun. The contract came from the Delgado family. I know. And the woman from the restaurant, we have her address, her schedule, her daughter's medical records. I know that too. Giovanni stood, buttoning his suit jacket. What I don't know is why she saved me. Vincent hesitated. Desperation? The Avellino Foundation funds half the pediatric wing. Maybe she thought. No. Giovanni's voice was certain. She moved before thought, before calculation. That wasn't strategy, that was instinct. He turned to the window, watching the city lights flicker like dying stars. Which means she's either the most selfless person I've ever met, or she's hiding something that makes her more dangerous than Marcus Delgado and every hired gun in Chicago combined. His reflection stared back at him, and for the first time in years, Giovanni Avellino felt something he'd trained himself to forget. Curiosity that bordered on obsession. Find out everything, he said quietly, and then find out what she needs most in this world. And then? Giovanni's smile was cold and certain. Then I'm going to give it to her, because debts, Vincent, always get collected. And Patty Macias just bought herself a collector who never forgets a face. Or a whispered warning in the dark. The story now shifts to reveal Patty's shattered marriage, Sophie's diagnosis, the night her husband emptied their accounts, and the impossible choice between medical bankruptcy and watching her daughter die. Setting up why saving Giovanni wasn't heroism, but survival in a world where she'd already lost everything except the one thing that mattered. The alley behind La Coroncina smelled like rotting produce and gunpowder. Patty's back pressed against cold brick while Giovanni's men moved around them like wolves circling prey, securing exits, checking roof lines, speaking in clipped Italian she couldn't follow. Giovanni stood 3 feet away, perfectly still except for his eyes. They tracked her with the focus of a man dissecting something under laboratory glass, calculating, measuring, deciding her value. You're shaking, he said quietly. Patty looked down. Her hands trembled violently, wine-stained and possibly blood-stained, though she couldn't remember whose. I'm fine. You're not. He stepped closer. But you will be. Vincent appeared at Giovanni's shoulder, phone pressed to his ear. Police are sweeping the building. We need to move you, sir. In a moment. Giovanni's gaze never left Patty's face. How did you see it? See what? The red dot. My men are trained to spot threats. You serve pasta. So tell me, Patty Macias, how does a waitress notice a sniper before trained killers do? Her breath caught on her own name in his mouth, intimate and dangerous. I don't know. I saw it. People don't just see death. Giovanni tilted his head. They're trained to, or traumatized into it. Which one are you? Patty's throat closed. She wanted to lie, but something in his expression told her he'd already decided on his own answer and was simply testing whether she'd confirm it. "Vincent," Giovanni said without looking away, "make sure Ms. Matias gets home safely." Relief flooded through her. "Thank you, I can take the bus." "No." The word cut like a knife. "You can't. Not tonight. Not anymore." He leaned in, close enough that she could smell sandalwood and gunpowder. "You saved my life. That makes you valuable. And valuable things need protection." Before she could argue, he was gone, disappearing into a black sedan with windows too dark to see through. Vincent gestured toward a second car. "Ma'am." Patty climbed in because refusing seemed more dangerous than compliance. She didn't notice the second car that followed her bus route home 20 minutes later, logging her address into a file that would never be deleted. Inside the sedan, Giovanni replayed the moment in his mind like footage on a loop. The red dot appearing, Patty's body going rigid, her hand on his shoulder, fingers trembling but voice steady. "Move fast. They're here. Run now." Not "I think" or "maybe." Certainty. Command. The voice of someone who'd seen violence before and knew exactly what happened when you hesitated. His men hadn't seen the threat. Professionals paid to die for him, and they'd missed it. But a waitress drowning in medical debt had spotted it instantly. Why? Giovanni pulled out his phone. "I want everything on Patty Macias. Employment history, family records, sealed juvenile files if they exist. I want to know why she moves like someone waiting for the world to attack." The memory always came back in fragments, sharp enough to cut. Patty was 16, standing lookout outside a convenience store on the south side, while two boys she thought were friends cleared out the register. It was supposed to be simple. 90 seconds, no weapons, just cash they'd split 3 ways for reasons that seemed important at the time. Her mother's eviction notice, a phone bill, shoes without holes. Then the owner came back early, then there was shouting, then a gunshot that wasn't supposed to happen. Patty ran, the boys ran. The owner bled out on linoleum that smelled like bleach and lottery tickets. The charges were sealed because she was a minor. Because she cooperated. Because the prosecutor believed her when she said she didn't know about the gun. But she learned something that night that stuck to her bones like radiation. The world was full of people who'd kill you for being in the wrong place at the wrong time. And if you wanted to survive, you learned to see danger before it saw you. She'd been scanning rooms ever since, tracking exits, counting seconds, calculating odds. It was the same instinct that made her notice when her husband started deleting texts, when he stopped kissing her goodbye, when the bank statements stopped coming because he'd redirected them to an address she didn't know existed. The same instinct that told her Giovanni Avellino wasn't grateful. He was hunting. St. Augustine Children's Hospital felt like a cathedral built to worship suffering. Everything was white and chrome and cold, designed to make you feel small and powerless and grateful for whatever mercy dripped from the insurance company's spreadsheets. Patty found Sophie in room 347, asleep beneath machines that beeped her heartbeat into the sterile air. 8 years old and small for her age, dark hair fanned across a pillow that smelled like antiseptic and broken promises. Patty sat in the chair she'd worn smooth over 6 months of vigils and forced herself not to cry. Crying accomplished nothing. Crying didn't pay bills or cure genetic heart defects or bring back husbands who'd decided their daughter's illness was too expensive to love through. "Mrs. Macias?" She looked up. A nurse, young and exhausted, hovered in the doorway. "I wanted to give you a heads up. There's talk of funding cuts to the pediatric wing. Nothing official yet, but some of the donor board members are pulling back. Dr. Reeves wanted you to know in case it affects Sophie's surgery timeline." The floor dropped out from under Patty's world. "How long?" Her voice sounded distant, drowned. "We don't know yet. Could be weeks, could be months." Sophie didn't have months. The nurse left. Patty sat frozen, watching her daughter's chest rise and fall with mechanical assistance, and felt the universe tighten its fist around her throat. Giovanni stood in the hallway outside room 347, hidden behind the glass partition of the family waiting area, and watched Patty Macias fall apart. She didn't sob. She didn't scream. She simply folded forward, elbows on knees, face in her hands, and shook silently like something breaking from the inside out. Vincent appeared beside him. "Sir, we have the file. Sealed juvenile record. Accessory to armed robbery. Store owner died. She was lookout." Giovanni's expression didn't change. "She's not innocent." "No, sir. But she is desperate." He watched Patty straighten, wipe her eyes, and paste on a smile for the sleeping child who couldn't see it. "And desperation makes people useful." He turned toward the elevator, mind already calculating. "She saved my life, which means I own the debt. And debts in my world don't get forgiven. They get leveraged." Patty Macias had just become the most valuable asset he didn't know he needed. She simply hadn't realized it yet, but she would. Soon. The text came at 2:47 a.m., a number Patty didn't recognize. Hospital Chapel, now. She knew who it was. Had known since the moment Vincent's car dropped her home and she'd spotted the second vehicle idling across the street, engine running, watching. Giovanni Avellino didn't ask. He summoned. The chapel was empty except for rows of votive candles throwing shadows across walls that had absorbed decades of desperate prayers. Giovanni stood beneath a stained glass window depicting St. Augustine, backlit like something fallen from grace and learning to enjoy the descent. He'd changed since the restaurant. Dark slacks, black shirt unbuttoned at the collar, revealing more of the tattoo that crawled up his throat like smoke. He looked less like a businessman and more like what he actually was: beautiful, dangerous, and utterly in control. "You came," he said without turning. "You didn't give me a choice." Patty stayed near the door, one hand on the frame, ready to run. "There's always a choice." Giovanni faced her, and the candlelight made his eyes look almost tender. Almost. "You could have ignored the message, called the police, disappeared into some other city with some other name. And you would have let me?" His smile was answer enough. Patty's hands clenched. "What do you want?" "To help you." "Liars go to hell. We're in a chapel." Giovanni laughed, genuine and low. "Then I'll burn with excellent company." He gestured to the pew beside him. "Sit." "I'd rather stand." "I'd rather you sit." Not a threat. Worse. A certainty that she would obey eventually, so why waste time pretending otherwise? Patty sat, leaving 3 feet of space between them that felt like inches. Giovanni leaned back, studying her profile like he was memorizing it for evidence. "Your daughter needs surgery, experimental, out of state, the kind of procedure that costs more than you'll make in 5 lifetimes of serving overpriced wine to underdeserving people." Her throat tightened. "I'll figure it out." "No, you won't." His voice was gentle, which made it crueler. "The hospital's already cutting her timeline. You heard the nurses. You have weeks before they push her case to reassess later, which is a polite way of saying they'll let her die slowly while pretending to care." Patty's nails dug into her palms hard enough to draw blood. "If you came here to remind me my daughter's dying, you wasted a trip. I came here to save her." The words hung in the air like smoke from the candles, beautiful and suffocating. Giovanni shifted closer, and the space between them evaporated. "I can pay for Sophie's surgery. Tonight, tomorrow, whenever the best surgeon in the country can clear his schedule. Off the books, no insurance companies, no donor boards, no waiting lists." Patty's heart stopped. Started. Stopped again. "Why?" "Because you saved my life. People don't pay 6-figure medical bills out of gratitude." "No," Giovanni agreed. "They don't." He turned to face her fully, and his expression was naked enough to hurt. "They pay them because they want something in return." There it was. the hook beneath the mercy. "What do you want?" Patty whispered. "You." He let the words settle. "Not your body, not your soul, just your eyes and ears. You go back to La Coroncina, you pour wine, you smile, you listen. Staff gossip, regulars' confessions, the way certain men go quiet when certain names are mentioned. Someone in my world set up that hit. Someone close. I need to know who. You want me to spy. I want you to survive." Giovanni's hand moved to cover hers, warm and heavy and far too intimate for a chapel or a stranger or anything that didn't already own her. "The people who tried to kill me will try again. And next time, they might decide the waitress who warned me is a loose end worth cutting." Patty tried to pull her hand away. He held it gently but firmly, a promise disguised as comfort. "I'm not a criminal," she said. "Neither am I. Officially." His thumb traced her knuckles. "You won't carry drugs, won't hold guns, won't do anything except what you're already doing, existing in spaces where powerful people forget to whisper. That's all I need." "And if I say no?" Giovanni's expression softened into something that looked almost like regret. "Then I walk away. Sophie stays on the waiting list, and in 6 months, maybe a year, you'll bury a little girl who could have been saved if her mother had been willing to bend instead of break." Patty's vision blurred. She hated him, hated herself more for considering it. "Why me?" Her voice cracked. "You could hire anyone." "Because you see things no one else does." Giovanni leaned closer, his voice dropping to something raw and real. "You noticed the red dot. You moved before thought. That's not training. That's instinct. And instinct can't be taught, or bought, or faked." He paused, and something flickered across his face, grief maybe, or memory. "I had a sister once," he said quietly. "Younger, sick like your daughter. The hospital here saved her life when every doctor in Italy said it was hopeless. The Avellino Foundation exists because of her. Because someone gave my family hope when we had nothing but prayers and desperation." Patty looked at him, really looked, and saw the truth beneath the lie. He wasn't manipulating her. He was weaponizing his own trauma, which was somehow worse. "Where is she now?" Patty asked. "Safe. Far from this life." Giovanni's smile was tired. "I made sure of that." The silence stretched between them, heavy with decisions that couldn't be unmade. Patty thought of Sophie sleeping 3 floors above them, machines breathing for her, heart stuttering on borrowed time. She thought of her husband's empty promises, her own sealed juvenile record, the store owner who'd bled out because she'd been too desperate and too young to understand consequences. She'd already crossed lines, already failed. Already lost everything except the one thing that mattered. "If I do this," she whispered, "if I help you, you swear Sophie gets the surgery?" "I swear it on the same God who's watching us lie to each other in his house." Patty closed her eyes, opened them, made the choice that would define every choice after. "Okay." Giovanni's hand tightened over hers, and when he spoke, his voice carried the weight of contracts signed in blood. "Then we have a deal." He pulled a burner phone from his pocket, placing it in her palm. "You call this number if you hear anything, if you see anything, if you feel anything wrong. And if I want out, you don't. Simple, final, true." Outside the chapel, Vincent waited with 2 more men Patty didn't recognize, shadows in expensive suits, who would follow her everywhere now, protecting her or imprisoning her or both. Giovanni walked her to the door, his hand resting briefly on the small of her back, a touch that felt like ownership. "Get some rest," he said. "You start tomorrow night." Patty walked to the elevator alone, burner phone burning in her pocket, like evidence of a crime not yet committed. She pressed the button for Sophie's floor and whispered to her reflection in the metal doors. I didn't sell my soul. I rented it. But her reflection looked back with hollow eyes that knew the truth. In Giovanni's world, there was no such thing as temporary, only debts that compounded until you forgot what freedom tasted like. La Coroncina felt different now. The same amber lights, same murmured conversations, same expensive people pretending their money made them immortal. But Patty moved through it like a ghost, learning to haunt her own life. She listened. Table 9. Two city councilmen discussing rezoning that would displace families for a development project Giovanni's shell companies were financing. Table 12. A defense attorney joking about a witness who'd suddenly forgotten what he saw. Table 16, Giovanni's table, remained empty except on Thursdays. A shrine to power, roped off like crime scene tape. Her phone buzzed. Giovanni. Anything? Patty. Councilman Breck is nervous, keeps checking his phone. Giovanni. Good. He should be. The texts came constantly now, not just about business. Sometimes he'd ask if she'd eaten, if Sophie was sleeping better, if she needed anything. The concern felt like a collar tightening 1 degree at a time until she couldn't remember what breathing freely felt like. Patty hated how often she checked for his messages. Hated more that she sometimes smiled when they arrived. Marco, the busboy, caught her elbow as she passed the kitchen. 23, charming, always ready to cover her tables when she needed to call the hospital. You look exhausted, he said, grinning. Late night? Every night's a late night. Patty forced a smile. Thanks for picking up my Friday shift. Any time. That's what friends do, right? He leaned closer, voice dropping conspiratorially. You ever figure out what happened with the shooting? Cops still sniffing around? Not really. I try not to think about it. Smart. Less you know, safer you are. Marco squeezed her shoulder. You need anything, you tell me, okay? Something in his tone felt off, too eager, too invested. But Patty was tired and desperate, and stupidly grateful for anyone who seemed to care. Actually, she said quietly, I'm worried about Sophie's next treatment. The hospital's being weird about scheduling. Marco's eyes softened. That's rough. But you're tough. You'll figure it out. She wanted to believe him. The alley smelled like rotting vegetables and cigarette smoke. Patty had gone out to throw away linens when she heard voices around the corner. Low, urgent, familiar. She doesn't suspect anything, Marco said into his phone. Still thinks I'm her friend. Patty froze, heart slamming against her ribs. Yeah, I got details. The kid's surgery got moved up. Avellino pulled strings. Patty's terrified it'll fall through. Marco laughed, cold and sharp. She also mentioned Breck's nervous. Exactly like you said, Giovanni's squeezing him. Silence while the person on the other end spoke. Relax. Giovanni trusts her because she's desperate. And desperate people are predictable. When the time comes, she'll be perfect leverage. Another pause. Her husband? Yeah, he's already reached out, trying to sell access to her for protection. Pathetic. The world tilted sideways. Patty pressed herself against the wall, bile rising in her throat. Every conversation, every worry she'd whispered to Marco in the break room, every tiny confidence, he'd fed it all to Giovanni's enemies like ammunition. And her husband, her coward thief, abandoner of a husband, was trying to sell her to people who'd already tried to kill Giovanni once. Marco's voice drifted closer. Don't worry about Avellino believing her over me. I've been here 2 years. She's been his pet project for 3 weeks. Who do you think he'll trust when I say she's playing both sides? Footsteps. Coming her way. Patty moved on instinct, slipping back inside before Marco rounded the corner. Her hands shook so violently she could barely grip the door handle. The kitchen staff barely looked up as she stumbled past them toward the employee bathroom. She locked herself in a stall and tried to breathe through the panic clawing up her throat. She was surrounded, betrayed from every direction. Her husband selling her, the busboy using her, Giovanni's rivals circling like sharks who'd smelled blood in the water. "Run," her brain screamed. "Take Sophie and disappear. Change your name, new city, new life. Let Giovanni's world burn without you." But Sophie couldn't travel, couldn't survive a cross-country escape with a failing heart and medications that cost more per day than bus tickets to nowhere. Running meant watching her daughter die slowly in some emergency room that didn't have Giovanni's money or connections or willingness to break rules. Patty pulled out the burner phone with trembling fingers. She typed one message: "We need to talk." The reply came before she'd even lowered the phone: "I'm already on my way." Patty sat on the closed toilet seat, burner phone clutched against her chest, and felt the last illusion of control slip through her fingers like wine through shattered crystal. Giovanni was coming, and when he arrived, she'd have to decide whether to trust the devil she'd saved or face the wolves closing in alone. Neither option felt like surviving. Both felt like different ways to drown. The bullet shattered the bus stop glass 3 inches from Patty's head. She didn't hear the shot, just the explosion of safety glass turning to diamonds in the streetlight, the sudden iron grip of hands yanking her backward, Vincent's voice barking orders she couldn't process through the ringing in her ears. 2 more shots punched through metal, car alarms screamed, people scattered like roaches when the lights come on. Giovanni's men surrounded her, a wall of expensive suits and drawn weapons, and Patty realized with sickening clarity that saving a mafia boss's life had painted a target on her back that would never wash off. Vincent pulled her into an SUV. "We're moving you, now." "My daughter, already secured, Mr. Avellino's orders." The world blurred into motion and sirens, and the nauseating understanding that she no longer controlled anything, not even which direction her body moved through space. The townhouse was beautiful, the way prisons are when they're designed by architects who've never been locked inside one. Hardwood floors, granite countertops, windows with bulletproof glass and guards stationed outside like gargoyles. Sophie slept in a bedroom that cost more per month than Patty's old apartment, hooked to portable machines that Giovanni's people had transported with terrifying efficiency. Patty stood in the living room, watching guards patrol the street below, and felt her chest collapse inward. The door opened. Giovanni walked in without knocking because he owned the locks, the walls, the air she was breathing. "You're safe here," he said. She turned on him, and 6 weeks of fear and exhaustion detonated. "Safe? You call this safe? I'm trapped in a house with armed men outside and my daughter sick upstairs and nowhere to run because you decided I'm worth protecting like I'm some asset you acquired." "You are safe," Giovanni repeated, voice dangerously calm. "The alternative was a bullet through your skull at a bus stop. Which would you prefer?" "I'd prefer you'd never walked into my restaurant." "Too late for that." "You don't get to decide." "I get to decide everything!" Giovanni's control shattered. He closed the distance between them, and his eyes burned with something raw and violent. "You saved my life, which makes you mine to protect whether you like it or not. I'd rather cage you than bury you, Patty. I'd rather you hate me alive than love my memory at your funeral." The silence crackled like a live wire. Patty's breath came in ragged gasps. "You don't own me." "Don't I?" His voice dropped to something quieter, more dangerous. "Your daughter's surgery is scheduled because of me. This roof over your head exists because of me. The only reason you're still breathing is because my men were watching that bus stop. I didn't ask for any of this. No, you just asked for your daughter to live, and I'm the only person in this godforsaken city capable of making that happen." Patty's hand flew up to slap him. Giovanni caught her wrist mid-swing, pulled her close, and the anger between them ignited into something that felt like drowning and breathing for the first time simultaneously. She didn't know who moved first. The kiss was brutal, desperate, furious. Giovanni's hand fisted in her hair, her nails dug into his shoulders. And for 10 seconds, the world narrowed to heat and rage and the taste of violence on both their tongues. Patty shoved him away, gasping, horrified at herself. Giovanni's chest heaved. His eyes were black and burning. Patty, don't! She backed toward the wall, wiping her mouth like she could erase what just happened. Don't say anything. He didn't. Just watched her with an intensity that felt like being dissected. The silence stretched until Giovanni finally spoke, voice rough. There's something you need to know. Patty's stomach dropped. What? Your husband. The money he stole. Giovanni's jaw tightened. It wasn't yours. It was mine. Laundered through accounts he was managing for one of my operations. When he ran, he took $300,000 that belonged to the Avellino family. The floor disappeared beneath her feet. I put out the order, Giovanni continued, each word careful and brutal. Not to kill him, to bring him back, but he went underground, and his associates, the people who helped him steal, they're the ones who ordered the hit on me. Retaliation for the pressure I put on them. Patty's vision blurred. You're telling me my life fell apart because of you? Yes. My husband ran because you were hunting him? Yes. Sophie's illness bankrupted us because the money that could have saved her was money you wanted back? Giovanni's expression didn't change. Yes. Patty wanted to scream, wanted to hit him, hurt him, make him feel a fraction of the agony that had defined her life for 6 months. But she also wanted to collapse into his arms and let someone else carry the weight for just 1 goddamn minute. The contradiction was tearing her apart. I hate you, she whispered. I know. I should have let you die. Probably. Giovanni stepped closer, and this time she didn't move away. But you didn't. And now we're both living with the consequences. His hand came up slowly, giving her time to flinch. She didn't. He cupped her face with a tenderness that felt more dangerous than any violence. You saved my life, Giovanni said quietly. Now I will decide how your story ends. Patty's breath caught. That's not your decision to make, isn't it? His thumb traced her cheekbone. You're in my house, under my protection, bound to me by debt and blood and a kiss you can pretend didn't mean anything. But we both know better. He was right. God help her, he was right. Patty pulled away, wrapping her arms around herself. I need to check on Sophie. Giovanni let her go, but his voice followed her up the stairs like a promise she couldn't escape. Sleep well, Patty. Tomorrow we hunt the people who tried to kill us both. Patty locked herself in Sophie's room and realized with crushing finality that Giovanni had already decided her ending. The only question left was whether she'd fight for a different one before it was too late. Marco knelt on the townhouse floor, hands zip-tied behind his back, blood trickling from his split lip. Giovanni circled him like a predator, deciding which part to devour first. Patty stood in the doorway, forcing herself to watch. Tell me again, Giovanni said quietly. Who you've been reporting to? Marco's eyes darted to Patty, desperate. She's lying. I never... Giovanni's fist connected with Marco's jaw, snapping his head sideways. Wrong answer. Marcus Delgado, Marco gasped. I report to Marcus Delgado. Patty's stomach twisted. The name meant nothing to her, but Giovanni's expression turned to carved stone. How long? 2 years, since before she started. Marco spat blood. They wanted someone inside. I was already here. Giovanni looked at Patty, and something in his gaze made her breath catch. Not anger, certainty. He'd believed her without question, without hesitation, without needing proof beyond her word. She was his now, in ways that terrified and steadied her simultaneously. Take him, Giovanni said to Vincent. I'll deal with him later. Marco screamed as they dragged him out. Patty didn't look away. The call came at dawn. Vincent's voice was clipped, professional. Delgado hacked St. Augustine's records. He's threatening to cancel Sophie's surgery unless you back off the investigation. Giovanni's response was immediate. Move her, now. St. Catherine's private facility. I want her in surgery within 48 hours. Patty listened from the bedroom doorway, watching Giovanni orchestrate her daughter's salvation with the same cold efficiency he'd used to break Marco's face. He was saving Sophie. He was also tightening the leash. When he hung up, their eyes met across the room. Thank you, Patty whispered. Don't thank me yet. Giovanni's expression was unreadable. This war is just beginning. Patty made her decision standing over Sophie's hospital bed at the new facility. Machines beeped softly, antiseptic air replacing the suffocating fear of St. Augustine's funding cuts and donor board politics. She could run, take Sophie, and disappear the moment the surgery was over. New names, new city, new life built on lies and paranoia and constant vigilance. Or she could stay, learn the rules, play the game, become the queen Giovanni already saw when he looked at her, instead of the prey everyone else assumed she was. Patty pulled out the burner phone and typed, I have something you need to know. The office was dark except for city lights bleeding through floor-to-ceiling windows. Giovanni sat behind his desk, and Patty stood across from him like a chess piece choosing its square. The night of the shooting, she said carefully, I overheard something. 2 men at table 9. One of them mentioned your sister. Giovanni went perfectly still. He said, the sister angle is still our best leverage if the restaurant play fails. I didn't understand it then. But now, she paused. Someone in your family told them about her. Someone close enough to know she exists. Giovanni's eyes turned to black ice. Who was at table 9? Councilman Breck and another man. Older, silver hair, expensive watch. Antonio Ricci, my father's oldest friend. Giovanni's voice could have frozen fire. My consigliere! The revelation hung between them like a blade. Thank you, Giovanni said quietly. Then, to Vincent hovering in the shadows, bring Antonio to the warehouse, tonight. Patty didn't ask what would happen there. Didn't need to. She'd just signed a man's death warrant with information only she could have provided. She was complicit now. Not just a witness, not just an asset, a player. 3 days later, Antonio Ricci's body was found in the Chicago River. The news called it mob violence. Giovanni's rivals called it a message. Patty called it the moment she stopped lying to herself about what she'd become. The townhouse balcony overlooked the city like a kingdom waiting to be conquered. Patty stood at the railing, wind pulling at her hair, watching lights flicker in buildings full of people whose lives weren't measured in blood debts and midnight interrogations. Giovanni appeared beside her, close enough that his heat bled through her thin sweater. Sophie's surgery is scheduled for Friday, he said. Best cardiac surgeon in the country. 97% success rate. Thank you. The words felt inadequate for the magnitude of what he'd done. You're the second most important person in my world now, Giovanni said quietly. After your daughter. Not love. Something darker, more binding. Devotion weaponized. Patty should have been terrified. Part of her was. But another part, the part that had spotted the red dot and made the choice that destroyed her old life, understood perfectly. What happens now? She asked. Now? Giovanni's hand found hers on the railing, fingers threading through hers with possessive certainty. Now you learn to be what you were always meant to be. And what's that? His smile was beautiful and terrible. Mine. The city sprawled beneath them like a battlefield dressed in diamonds. And Patty finally understood the truth Giovanni had known since the night she whispered in his ear. She hadn't saved the devil. She'd awakened him, and he would never let her go. If this story connected with you, you'll love what's coming in our next video. Make sure you're subscribed.